theoretical things regularly, when you place or when you make an orthodontical appliance to do the arches straighter, and functionally and aesthetically better, you should use the theories of the tooth movements, tooth migrations, and bone growth as well, because tooth migration, tooth movement, and bone growth is an elementary part of orthodontic movement, but it is elementary in case of the normal growth of the dentofacial skeleton. Okay, dentofacial skeleton, this topic is connected to these areas. And you can see here the clinical significance of the topic. I have mentioned the orthodontic practice, but simply tooth tilting is based on these things, of tooth migration. When you remove a mesial tooth, after the removal, the healing site is so the site of the extraction is healing, and you will see later that the distal tooth will tilt because of the tooth migration things. And it is connected to aesthetic and function, and of course orthodontical treatment. And after simple extraction, the site is healing, and you will see the new bone formation. So it is connected to the bone growth. A simple extraction is connected somehow to the bone formation, to the bone growth of the dentofacial skeleton. And we have some disorders, diseases, for example, acromegaly, in which the bone growth of the mandible, for example, is extremely accelerated. So it is pathologically high, the bone deposition, and you will see an extremely big mandible. And the opposite is seen in rheumatoid arthritis and osteoarthritis, so destruction, bone destruction is seen. So tooth movement, migration, and bone growth and changes of the bone growth is connected to this dental topic I have mentioned you. And the most important area is, I mentioned you, the orthodontic practice, and as you know, the malocclusion is very, very common in the normal population, so it is not a bad business to do orthodontic work, because we have a lot of patients with malocclusion and aesthetical problems as well. And as you can see here, the malocclusion is very, very high, but 10% from 30% we need even treatment is needed. Malocclusion could be not very significant, aesthetically is not important problem between the upper and lower teeth. So occlusal interferences, you can name this malocclusion, occlusal interferences, but most of the cases you don't need any intervention, dental intervention. But significant percentage of the population needs treatment, orthodontic treatment. So what is the most important factor in tooth movement, tooth movement? Of course, the basis of tooth movement is the force applied. Even inside the oral cavity, you have normal forces, for example, forces of the tongue, forces of the buccal muscles, and we have an equilibrium of these forces, because the outer force, inner force, upper force, lower force, the occlusal force, these diminish, these forces diminish each other, and the result will be normally that the tooth is not migrating, but the tooth is stable in the position, because of the equilibrium of the forces around the tooth. And And we have force application, direct force applications. For example, when you place bracers. So orthodontic appliances, fixed appliances, and you can apply forces, but the physiologic forces during orthodontic movement is the mild, so not very strong and not very gentle, but mild forces with long duration acting on the tooth. The result will be tooth movement, continuous tooth movement, because you would like to straighten the dental arch and you would like to move the tooth into the ideal position, with migration or tooth movement. And you can see here the ideally applicable or usable forces. So between 10 and 200 grams should be used with bracers. Okay? And when you apply strong forces with very short duration, for example, mastication, during mastication, okay? Very strong, but relatively strong, I mean, but very, very thick forces acting on the tooth surface. And the result will be no movement at all, because short force can cause some discomfort, some pain to the patient, but not continuous movement, okay? But when you apply strong and continuous forces, for example, with a very, very strong wires or bracers, when the force application of the orthodontic appliance, when the force is very strong, so when the appliance is very strong, the result will be pathologic, pathologic. The result will be bone destruction, and pain, and abnormal tooth movement of the patient, abnormal mobility, tooth mobility, and pain and discomfort for the patient. So again, mild forces with long duration, physiologic force application during orthodontical treatment, strong continuous forces significantly higher than 200 grams. These are or could be pathologic, can cause bone and tooth problems. Okay, and
more than 200 grams.
200. That's but significantly higher. Then between you will see between 10 and 200. 200 is the ratio, is the maximum you should use during the treatment. And when I mentioned you that the problem of the force application. So short application of the force, or when the force is applied more than 6 hours per day. So when you give an appliance to the patient, you should tell the patient that she or he should use the appliance more than 6 hours, usually 8 hours or more per day, okay? Because when the patient uses only 1 hour per day, it will not be effective, okay? It will not be effective. So we have an application time, acting time threshold, and this is 6 hours per day for the orthodontical removable appliances. Removable, okay, because when you place a fixed appliance, it is inside continuously all the day. So duration of the force is important. Duration, application of the force is important. And you can see here that when you apply forces to the crown surface, because the crown is inside the oral cavity, so you should use the crown to exert force application to this. So it is applied to area of the crown, one area of the crown, and the result will be different tooth movements. You can see here the rotation, of course. Around the center of rotation, it could be axial, and it could be transverse axis of rotation. Okay, transverse, along transverse it is tilting, along axial it is rotating, okay. And we have tipping and root uprighting movements as well. Of course, when it is tilted, you should upright the tools to correct the axis, the vertical axis, to be more aesthetic, the crown and the appearance of the crown. And the translation is used regularly, and this is the most wanted movement types in orthodontics. It depends, but the translation means bodily tooth movement. So the whole tooth is moving, not just the crown is tilting around the axis, but the whole tooth, bodily translational movement. It depends on the force application. You know, when you apply a single force with a spring type removable appliance here, you will tilt the tooth. But when you place a bracket to the tooth surface, the whole tooth in the body could be moved, because the force application is the force is applied in a not just a point, but in a large surface. In a large surface, so you can move the whole tooth bodily. It depends on the position, the extent of the force application, the surface. So it is a special techniques in orthodontics, okay? And we have inclusion, extrusions as well, okay? Extrusion is, for example, tipping.
What is tipping?
Just tilting.
Tilting of the root?
No, tilting of the whole tooth. I mentioned you when you remove mesially, the distal tooth will tip or tilting mesially. Okay.
Tilting.
Tilting, yes.
Root up.
Yes. The opposite of the root uprighting. Okay, tilting. Yes. So you can see here the different force applications. It's not very important, but theoretically I have mentioned you that the root is between 10 and 200, or nearly, okay, nearly. But these are the general forces. When you would like to include the tooth, because it is out elongated, the crown is elongated, sometimes you would like to include, you should use only minimal forces, because the tip where the axis, where the root axis is very, very little, and you need only little forces to deepen the tooth into the bone. But when you would like to move the whole surface of the crown and bone, you need more higher forces. Okay, higher forces. So bodily movement needs significantly much more higher force application than inclusion, because the apex is very small area, but the whole, in bodily movement, the whole periodontal bone and periodontal tissues in the whole surface should be reorganized and should be remodeled, breaking down and building up. So, average forces you can see here. So the tooth movement, basis of tooth movement, without bone opposition and bone resorption, no tooth movement is occurring. So bone opposition and bone resorption we need for continuous tooth movement. And of course, the tooth movement is resulted from the removal of the existing alveolar bone in the pressure zone, pressure side. You know, when you press the tooth with force, the other side will be of the you will see later in slides. The other side will be the pressure side, but the side or area where the force is applied is the tension zone or tension side. And on the tension side, new bone is deposited, is formed, but on the pressure side, bone is resorted. So, but it is a general rule, you know, when you, in every part of your body, when you apply forces, so when you press the bone, in every bone, when you press, the result will be bone resorption. So continuous pressure will be resulted in bone resorption, like here this. And of course, we have bone in the periodontium, but of course non-mineralized tissues, for example, periodontal membrane, we have here, of course, and the collagen fibers of the periodontium is remodeling as well. The collagen fibers of the periodontium, periodontal ligament also, yes. So the soft tissues with the bone is breaking down and building up or disrupted and forming similarly. But the bone is resorted. It is a little bit not very logic, but the bone is resorted more easily than the periodontium, than the soft tissue, you know, than the soft tissue. And it is very important in the clinical practice because you may know that in orthodontic practice we have the active phase of the treatment and the stabilization phase of the treatment. The active phase of the treatment with brackets, for example, and the stabilization phase of the treatment with splints. And for the splinting time, to maintain the result of the treatment with splints, we need 2 times more management phase, okay? Because the soft tissues reorganizing more so more time we need for the reorganization of the soft tissues than the hard tissue, than the bone remodeling, for the bone remodeling. And you can see here this basis of the tooth translation, you know. This is the force application. The force is applied, as I mentioned you, on a large surface, relatively large surface of the crown with lasers, for example, and you can initiate here bodily movement, and on the other side there will be the pressure side, because with the force the root is pressing against the surface of the lamina dura. This is the lamina dura. And where you have the pressure side, of course, bone is removed. Bone is removed with resorption. Okay, bone resorption. Osteoclastic activity. Okay, multinuclear osteoclasts will be acting or will be functioning there, functioning there. And we have the tension side where the pressure is decreased, so less pressure is occurring. And here the tension side osteoblastic activity, with osteoblastic activity, new bone is forming, is new bone. And of course, we have the PDR fiber remodeling, or the organization of the PDR fibers on both sides, all along the periodontium. And the tooth tilting, when the force is more simple, acting on a point, for example, with removable spring appliance, you can see here that on both sides we have tension and pressure zones. Okay, so tooth tilting or rotation, simple and single force application, you can see here, and on both sides you will see the tension zone and the pressure zone, because along the transversal axis, the whole root is rotating. So when the force is here, in the marginal side of the periodontium, on the other side, on the opposite side of the acting force, you will see the marginal side will be the pressure and the periapical side will be the tension, because it is pressing here against the bone and it is moving away from the bone. And on the other side, it is just the opposite. Okay, so it is just a simple logical thing, nothing special in it. It is tilting, and one side is pressing against the bone, and one side is moving away from the bone. One area of the root is moving away. Here there will be the tension, and here there will be the pressure area of the periodontium. And when you apply forces with orthodontical treatment, the first we can see three phases of the orthodontical treatment in relation to the tooth movement. Okay, in relation to the tooth movement. The first will be the initial movement phase, or mechanical, because when you place removable appliance with springs, the force is immediately applied to the bone surface, and this force will deform the surrounding tissues, and the result will be immediate mechanical tooth movement. Okay, immediate displacement of the alveolar process and the bending of the alveolar bone, and movement, immediate mechanical movement of the tooth. But it is not a physiologic tooth movement, or not a movement with bone metabolism, but it's simply mechanical deformation of the tissues. So the immediate movement, or initial movement phase. And then we have a leg phase. No movement at all occurring. No movement in the leg phase, in the leg phase. This leg phase is maybe 1-2 days, not very hard. Leg phase, no movement you will see, but of course in the tissues there is an activity of the cells, and the metabolism of the stressing tissues is accelerated, higher, cell activity and molecular production. These molecules are very important later for the in the removing of the bone, in the new bone formation. Mediators is formed, cell is activated.
So the osteoblast and osteoclast in this phase, they are coming, arriving to the site of resorption or building, and then they start to activate. But in these 2 days, they are not really active, just migrate. This is the meaning?
Yes, so yes, really. So the osteoblasts are there because osteoblasts are at the side. But the osteoclasts should be differentiated and migrating. Yes. So the osteoclasts, yes. And here there is no movement, but because of the pressure, there is some there is some not destruction but reionization of the periodontium. Because of the pressure, you will see some ionization. Ionization means it is a new protein-like tissue, but amorphous. Protein-like tissue is degenerate. It is a type of degeneration. Ionization is occurring because of the pressure inside the periodontium. This ionization depends on the force activity. You know, when the force is very, very high, the ionization is higher. When the force is low, we have some hyaline type tissue. This hyaline is a amorphous protein mass in the periodontium. Okay, so it is a histological finding. It is not a molecular finding. It is a histological finding. This ionization, cell-free zone, no cells in it because when you press the area, the cells, so it is not ideal site for cell function. So no cells in this hyaline mass. And the most important phase, and this is why we apply orthodontical appliances, and this is the phase 3 or continuous movement phase. Okay? Here it is very important that continuous tooth movement is occurring with frontal bone resorption. Okay, frontal bone resorption. This is an important term. Frontal bone resorption. Later you will see why it is important. So, physiology stages of tooth movement you can see here. And as I mentioned, then you test the periodontium, the blood flow, and the capillarity and the vessel diameters is changed. So the blood flow is changed, the metabolism is changed, the oxygenization is changed in the periodontium. So when you apply forces, you will change the PDL blood supply. And you will see that some mediator molecules is forming needed for bone and soft tissue metabolism. And cell activation, I mentioned that osteoblasts should be activated and we need time. The osteoblasts are located there, so no migration is needed, but for the osteoclasts migration we need, so more time we need to have the osteoclasts at the site of resorption. And we have two forms of resorption. Frontal resorption, I mentioned you this frontal resorption is the normal. We need here in orthodontical treatment frontal bone resorption, and you will see that this frontal bone resorption is resulted in bone removal on the surface of the lamina dura facing to the root surface. Okay, facing to the root surface. This is the reason why it is named as frontal bone resorption, because it is facing the lamina dura. Of course, we have the two sides of the lamina dura, two areas. The side facing to the tooth, to the cementum, to the root, and this and frontal side of the lamina dura, where the frontal bone resorption is occurring. And we have the other side of the lamina dura, where the so-called undermining resorption may occur. The undermining resorption, this this undermining resorption is the result of the resorption of that side of the lamina dura which is facing to the bone marrow. Okay? So this is the undermining bone resorption. And of course, this is the frontal is the normal, the wanted, the physiologic, and the undermining resorption is seen when you apply too heavy, too strong forces. Okay, too strong forces is applied. The result will be undermining bone resorption. Okay. In this undermining resorption, you will see that first the tooth is not moving. So in frontal bone resorption, after 2 days, you will see tooth movement. But when you apply too strong forces, you will see that even in a week, you cannot see any tooth movement. Because the outer side of the lamina dura, so facing to the root, is not resorpted. Okay? So tooth movement is seen only when the frontal side of the lamina dura is resorpted. And there is the room, place for the tooth to move to the area from where the bone is resorpted away. But in undermining resorption, the frontal side of the lamina dura facing toward the root is not changed. So no movement is seen. In this case. And what happened in this undermining case, in this unwanted, when you applied unprofessionally to high forces appliances with high forces, what happened? Suddenly the whole PDL blood supply is blocked. So the vessels are blocked and there is no blood supply. Of course it is bad, pathologic. So you shouldn't block with forces the PDL, because when you don't have blood supply, the cells will die in the side. And the result will be necrosis, aseptic necrosis, without just the pressure can cause aseptic necrosis without bacteria. But this aseptic necrosis is seen under the lamina dura. Lamina compacta or lamina dura the same, okay? Lamina compacta or lamina dura. And the PDL becomes ionized, or ionization means changes of the tissues without the ionized tissue will be cell-free and homogeneous. The protein-like mass will be homogeneous. So the PDL will be ionized without cell homogeneous mass, molecular mass. This is the hyaline. So because we have another meaning of the hyaline, hyaline cartilage. This is another thing, okay? Hyaline cartilage. This is another thing. It is just a morphological term. The periodontal bone breaks through and the tooth becomes mobile or movable. So after some time, because with this undermining resorption, the bone marrow side of the periodontium will of the lamina dura, bone marrow side of the lamina dura, is distorted, and this distortion, undermining distortion, will weaken the lamina dura itself. And when the lamina dura is very weak, when the bone is very weak, you suddenly bite on the tooth accidentally, and the result will be breaking through the lamina dura, okay? Lamina dura. And this is the meaning of the previous things, is the finding in undermining resorption, okay? The finding in undermining resorption. So you can see here the case, two strong force, no problem under tension zone, because here we have, the pressure is decreased and osteoblastic activity, and the PDL is widened. So where the PDL is widened, you will see the blood supply is increased, but the problem is here. It is compressed or thinned. The pressure side, the too heavy force will compress the pressure side too much, and you will see that the blood vessels inside the periodontium are blocked. Blocked. The blood vessels are blocked, so no blood supply. The cells inside the periodontium cannot survive but we have cell activity on the other side of the lamina dura. This is the lamina dura. So this frontal side facing toward the tooth is limited by the blood supply, so no cell activity, but on the other side we have a pressure side as well, and we have here bone remover, and the bone is removed from wrong side, because you need bone remover here from the frontal side toward the facing to the root surface. But in this heavy force case, when you have undermining resorption, the bone is removed from wrong side, and the result will be that this undermining resorption by osteoclasts, because the osteoclasts can survive only on the other side of the lamina. Here they cannot, because no blood supply, and these osteoclasts are very oxygen depending cells, okay, because the metabolism is very high, and they will remove the bone continuously, and the result will be that this will be very weak and very thin. The lamina dura will be very thin, and when the patient biting on during chewing, suddenly this weakened lamina dura will not withstand the force, and this lamina dura will break through, and the result will be pain. So the patient feels pain or discomfort, and of course tooth mobility, because it is breaking through, and the root becomes movable. Yes?
The pressure side is distally and the tension side is medially?
It could be distally, mesially, but
Because if the root is tilting distally, then the pressure should be, right? Always distally.
The pressure side is always the other side, opposite side of the force application.
But we need to know if it's medially or distally, or is it always distally, the pressure side?
No. So usually it depends on the tooth position. Usually the teeth are located in wrong position, and for example palatally. This palatally. So here the pressure side is the buccal side. The pressure side is that side of the tooth under orthodontical movement in which the tooth movement is directed.
Can I say that the pressure side is always opposite to the functional cusp?
No. It is not anatomical. It is not an anatomical thing, but it depends on the force application, and you place the force as an orthodontist. Okay, you, because sometimes the tooth is located in a wrong position. It is located too distally. You have to move mesially. Okay, but sometimes the wrong positioned tooth is located to inside. In this case, you have to apply the force from inside to outside. So it depends only on the clinical situation, and it is not an anatomical term. This, because this is the force application, the force is applying here, you can see, and the tooth is moving to this direction. The result will be that the tooth is moving to this direction, toward this. It is not connected to the anatomical cusps things, but it is just the force application connected to the force application and the appliance adjustment, okay, or the plan of the appliance. Because we have different malpositions and malocclusions, and you have to straighten the dental arch indifferently, so it is mesially or distally positioned only, okay? So in 15 minutes we will be here, maybe